Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer for Sports Illustrated and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider podcast, joined now by a guy that works for me as my assistant beat writer. But more importantly to me than that, he's a dear friend, the great Zeke Trezevant. Now, Zeke, we got to wish you a happy birthday. You're 35. You're just doing well. We're so proud of you. So happy birthday to you, my friend.
Yes, sir, Hondo. Thank you very, very much. I'm glad I get to spend some time with you today on my birthday, man. So I appreciate that.
I'm glad to get to spend time with you. All right, OTAs, depending on when people watch this, they can be watching it before or after OTAs today, but OTAs second availability. I'm just curious for you, what has stood out to you this offseason watching the Raiders? Now, I'm going to go first because you and I were at practice last week, and what really hit me was the pace was fast under Josh. I give him credit for that. But they would stop. And even though it was quick, they would teach on the field. Josh was more of a, hey, just keep going. We'll talk about it in the classroom. And their feeling is if you're doing it wrong, let's fix it right now. Let's not wait to get to the classroom so you don't keep practicing it wrongly. I like this little twist that they've added. They're still going fast, but doing a little bit of teaching. That really impressed me. What did you think of that?
Yeah, so that I caught that specifically when we were watching the offense, and more specifically route combinations. They were kind of, if you will, I don't want to say bird dogging it, right? But they weren't necessarily going full speed. But even at that pace, you can kind of see what Getsy was trying to implement. And there's a lot to be excited about there. I'm sure we'll talk about that soon. But again, specifically to what you're talking about, the pace was a little bit slower, but you can see everything that they were trying to do. It made a lot of sense just from the side.
And you were watching offense, and I was over with the defensive line. You know, I like to hang around the big uglies, the offense and defensive line. And I saw it with the defensive line. The other thing that stood out to me, and then I want to get to what hit you, was they've added huge screens to the field. Now it's literally like massive screens like you'd see in a stadium. So the players can go over, and when they're getting a drink of water, they're literally teaching up on these massive screens. We'll try to get a picture of those today just to show everybody. But man, I thought that was fascinating to me. What did you think?
Definitely a new twist to this year, and I caught myself staring up kind of in amazement a couple of times. Like that's just it was unique. I'm not sure I've quite seen anything like it. But at the same time, it's efficient, right? You can have those guys right there on the field, and like you said, now the film room comes outside, right? You don't have to have a whole nother period. Obviously, you will, but you can go ahead and get that film study right there outside, and then make those changes right there. So that was definitely a great addition to practice.
Zeke, another thing that really shocked me, if I'm being honest, and I've talked about this on a previous podcast, but a lot of coaches like to go in and they don't say anything, or if they do, um, they kind of minimize the assistant coach. Leave it there. And one particular play, a player did something and did it really well. And AP looked at him and goes, "That's what happens when you listen to your coach." I thought it was interesting. I saw it a couple times. AP interacting with guys, building his staff up. Not only do his players love to play for him, but now building up a staff that loves to coach with him. I thought that was fascinating to me. I'd love your thought.
Yeah, I was actually, watching AP a couple of different times and for a couple of different reasons as well. And it's definitely been interesting to kind of see the approach he's taking. For as quote unquote rah-rah as he's been, that's not kind of how he's been in practice, from what I've noticed so far. So, but what that tells me is he's very self-aware, right? That tells me that he realizes that that's kind of what's been said about him. And he realizes that he can impact the game, he can impact practices in a lot different of a way than that. On a very smaller level, the one thing kind of similar to that I noticed was, I believe it was during 7-on-7, most of the time the coaches, especially the head coach, stands to the side. He's not necessarily in the play. You look on the field and AP he was taking a knee, and the ball's getting thrown over his head, right? Like AP is literally in the play, right? And that was something unique that I noticed about him this year too. So it's definitely interesting to see the changes.
Here was something else about AP that sticks out to me. Bill Belichick, who I think is a phenomenal coach, is constantly taking notes. And I was shocked that Josh McDaniels did not take near as many notes as Bill Belichick. AP is a Bill Belichick. I mean, he's writing all the time. I thought that was fascinating too. Did you not?
Yeah, and again, it shows that he's a student, he's a student of the game. And if the biggest knock on AP was quote unquote experience, right? Like he didn't have the experience, which was a fair assessment. Well, what's the quickest way to catch up on experience and catch up on knowledge that you lack? It's taking notes, right? And that's something that he's taking advantage of. So to me, a lot of the things that he's done has shown me that he heard what was being said about him when he was, up for the job, and he's going to work on those weaknesses. So I was very impressed.
All right, let's talk about now what stood out to you.
Yeah, what stood out to me, and I'm gonna laugh because I had already told you one of these. If you don't mind me saying, Trey Tucker. In Trey Tucker and overall, what I'll tell you is this: a lot of those guys, some of those guys, you can just see physically the differences in their body. Malcolm Kuntz was another one. Just the guys, they just look physically stronger. Aiden O'Connell looked physically stronger. So the first thing I would say in terms of what I noticed, Trey Tucker running very, very crisp routes, and dare I say, he kind of reminded me of prime I can't think of his name right now. Hunter Renfro, sorry. Prime Hunter Renfro, in terms of how crisp he was running his routes, in terms of when he makes that break out of his routes, he's there. But Trey looked quicker, he looked stronger, he looks ready to go. Another thing that stuck out to me was Aiden, and more Aiden. On top of just being accurate, right? There's a drill, and I'm pretty sure we saw it on social media, where he's throwing it into the net, and he was just on the money. For me, it wasn't that he was throwing it in the net, it was how he was throwing it in the net. He was throwing it in the net like he was mad. He was throwing it in the net like he might as well. It's like almost Larry Bird, like throw it, turn your back, it's going in. That's kind of what I noticed from Aiden. So just the confidence and everything that he was doing. And even in 707, he threw a couple of passes where it was like, he threaded the needle, right? Aiden last year wouldn't have thrown some of those passes that we saw recently. So there's a lot of different things, a lot of reasons to be excited. Another thing I would say I noticed is Getsy's, in terms of his the offensive scheme, just variety, just pure variety. The Raiders aren't going to go undefeated this year, but I'll tell you this: if they lose a game, it won't be because the offense was stagnant and boring, and that you're not going to see that over and over and over again this season. So if they lose a game, it won't be because the offense didn't have it or they didn't try different things, because Getsy's bringing a pretty good playbook.
And listen, don't anybody, as we get so many emails, okay, what were you seeing? We don't talk about formations. We don't
Nope.
talk about schematics. We get into nothing about
Variety.
that. We're not going to do that. That's part of our agreement as pro football writers, is we get the access, but we don't do anything to hurt the team, and we wouldn't. So don't email and ask. I know everyone's going to, or this is the best one, because I follow more people on social media than most media. They'll say to me, oh, can you just tell me? No, don't ask. And that's a quick way for me to hit unfollow. All right. Now, anything else that stood out to you?
Just the overall buzz around the team. You can tell that these guys have been working hard. You can feel the excitement, and specifically not just the excitement of it being another year, but the excitement of finally putting the hard work on the field, right? They've been working the whole offseason, and I think they're excited to kind of show the hard work paying off. That was the vibe that I picked up on.
Hey, let's now switch to something that you and I were sitting next to each other in the front row. And by the way, congratulations now. You now have an assigned seat in the front row next to me. It's good to have
Yeah,
you there.
progress.
Tom McMahon, the special team coach. That was probably one of the best press conferences I've ever been in. If people didn't watch the video, we've got it up. They can go watch it. How phenomenal was he teaching? I'm excited for kickoffs now, Zeke.
Yeah, listen, and I told you right on the moment, right after, I said, hey, that was the most exciting I've ever heard special teams be made out to be. In terms of the way that McMahon explained everything. And like you said, he was a teacher up there, right? He was teaching us some things that honestly we all need to know, right? Especially with the new kickoff rules. There's different intricacies there that a lot of us just don't know. We're not as familiar with, right? It's the first year that they've ever had this rule. So all in all, he kind of broke down just different aspects of the game from a special teams point. And it was very interesting to say the least.
I heard from one of the players who saw his video that I posted, and he goes, if you think he was exciting to the press, you should see how he is when he talks to the players. I mean, that just, and you heard me tell him, Coach, I confess it. I'm ignorant. I don't understand it. Explain it. And he didn't care. He was almost thrilled to be explaining and teaching me. I felt bad for everybody else in the room, but I thought everybody else enjoyed it.
Yeah, listen, 100%. I know I definitely did. Just to learn. I like to learn. And that's what he did. He helped us learn just new aspects of things. And I'll tell you this, I feel like even without a new rule change, I think he would have been just as interesting, right? And it's always fun to hear somebody explain something that they're passionate about, right? That was the thing about him that I noticed. He's just passionate, and it's hard to not pay attention to somebody who's passionate.
The Raiders did what I thought was a brilliant move. They go out and give Max an additional $6 million. They didn't have to do it. He wasn't, if you don't give it to me, I'm holding out. And I want to get into this with you. Tom Telesco has been very vocal that he wants to take care of his players. And by doing this, by the re-signing of the Andre James, he goes and re-signed some other guys. He didn't try to nickel and dime them. He offered them. I mean, they made an offer to Josh that I thought was too big. And had he signed, I would have been very critical. But it was an offer that they had reason to believe if they offered, he was going to take. And Tom Telesco has earned a ton of respect in this building from these players of how he has handled himself, the way he's handled the players. Overall, if you're going from the day he was hired till now, and we both thought Champ Kelly should have got the job, but that's not Tom Telesco's fault. When you go from the day he got the job to where he is to now, everything, including how he treated Champ, this guy's done nothing but do an A-plus job. Your thoughts on Telesco?
I think even more so what you're feeling and what the guys feel is just him being very genuine. I think that's what people are feeling. And I think the players can tell that instantly. And I think some would probably argue that wasn't necessarily the case from the previous regime. And I think that's a breath
Can I
of
ask
fresh.
you a question? I
Uh-huh.
want to ask you a question. I know I'm interrupting, but I want to ask you a
Uh-huh.
question because you
Yeah, yeah,
just said something.
yeah, yeah.
Do you think that was more towards McDaniels or Ziegler? Because I know the players love Ziegler.
Yeah, I think overall, I think it was more towards Josh, but I think Josh and Dave are just tied at the hip. So I think maybe sometimes Dave kind of came across as not being genuine because of how close he was to a not genuine person, right? So I definitely think it was more Josh than Dave. But I think the players overall, I think in the players' minds, they lump those two together. And that's kind of how Dave kind of takes the brunt of it a little bit. But I think in terms of Tom, I definitely think the players feel that. And I think the front office feels that, right? It just goes through the entire organization. And I think with Tom, he genuinely has everybody's best interest at mind. Everybody, no matter if I knew you, if I have a connection to you, if you played somewhere that I used to be, none of that matters with Tom. And I think that's what the players feel. And, they're going to pay him back for that. They're going to pay him back for that. So for sure.
I got to tell you, so listening to players talk about Tom is pretty fascinating to me. Just the way they reflect on him. I've heard more than one guy, man, he's a good dude. You want that from your general, and you remember I shared this with you. A good general manager understands my owner needs his ego fed because he's an owner. But my coach has to be fed because I need my players to respect him. And a good general manager really doesn't have a whole lot of ego. That's Tom Telesco.
No, I agree. Yeah, there's very, very little ego in terms of what Tom is doing, what he says, how he carries himself. It's not his whole thing is the team, right? And when you bring that attitude to work from the position that he's in, everybody else is going to bring the same attitude as well. So I think that's what you're feeling from everybody.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, I want to flip bit a little bit. I want to talk about some players that have stood out to me. You've already addressed Aiden, so we won't go there. But Malcolm, he looks different physically, but he acts different mentally. Um, I want to make it very clear. We are in no way implying that he had a bad mental attitude. He's walking around though feeling his oats. He's feeling good. He's being a leader. We heard Patrick Graham talk about that with you and I. But he confidence does wonders, does it not?
Oh, 100%, especially in football. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I think with Malcolm, I think what you're seeing with Malcolm is just focus, right? And then he's on the other side of he's proved it to himself. So I think with Malcolm, there was a little bit of, unsurety. And then when he finally crossed over that plateau, it was like, okay, let's go. And I think once he did that, he's like, now he's at that point where he wants to prove to everyone and to himself that those last 8 games were not a fluke. So I think that's what you're seeing from him right now. Focus, definitely a leader, a little bit more vocal than he was last year already. So he's going to be one to watch this season for sure.
I want to talk about a guy that you and I have been very high on all off season, while others weren't. Now, I want to make it clear. I believe that if Brock Bowers and Joe Alt were not there and they couldn't have traded the pick, I believe they were going to take Talise Fawaga and be happy with it. He's a dude. But that was not a fact that they did not believe in Thayer. That's why they had Talise and they had Brock. They thought there were both dudes. And okay, we don't need Talise. We're very happy with Thayer. And I thought personally, he's got a little mojo now. You can see he's never been a guy that lacked confidence, but he's a guy now, I think, that has a little bit of boy, Zeke, maybe you can help me find the word. It's not confidence, but assurance, maybe. I think that may be the word. What are your thoughts on Thayer?
I think with Thayer, it's assurance, and I think it's a chip on his shoulder. I think with him, he's always had the confidence. I think he's got the confidence. He's played well every time he's played in the past. I think now is just again, he gets the chance to go prove it. And obviously, with them discussing potentially drafting an offensive lineman at his position, there's just that, hey, now I need to go prove myself, right? For a lot of different reasons. So I think, just from the way he spoke, just his tone of voice when we spoke to him, it was very just like, okay, it's my time to shine. There's nobody else in front of me. I need to go get it, right? And I think that's where he is right now.
Let's talk about Michael Mayer. This is another guy. You were next to me when I told him when you were at Notre Dame, you were so gregarious. I remember one time watching him just get smacked and he gets up and smiling and smacks the guy in the butt. This is a guy that was just a football player that loved the game. Even when he did some things right last year, and he did a lot right, you didn't see that with him. I think, and you heard me ask him, I said, Michael, it appears to me we got Notre Dame Michael Mayer back. And oh, yeah. He went from, I don't know, but he came out like Hulk Hogan at the OTAs. I think Raiders are not even going to recognize Michael Mayer.
Michael Mayer, I think he is in a better mental spot in terms of overall, right? And he said it himself, right? In terms of learning the playbook, this is going to be a much easier offense for him to learn. I think he's excited about that. I think he looks at, and he spoke to this as well, Cole Kmet from the Bears, the good season that he had under Getsy. I think he's looking at it like if Cole can do that, Michael Mayer could do that. So he's excited there as well. And then he's been putting in the work. He looks bigger than he played last year. He does. So between that, the new offense, extra help on offense, right? I think he's excited for the chance to just go out there and show what he can do as well. So he's going to have a good season.
So I reported this last year, even after Getsy got fired, before I ever even thought he was going to be a Raider, that I was talking to people within the organization up there who I know well that told me Getsy was a fall guy. This was a coach issue, not a offensive coordinator issue. I am impressed with how he handles questions. I'm impressed the way he answers questions. I'm impressed with what the players are head over heels over the guy. Are you a little bit surprised? I was at how quickly the players have. It's not like, okay, he's our new coordinator. They've embraced him. I was a little surprised. Your thoughts?
So I'll tell you, I actually, just from hearing him speak, and I told you this one, getting right on the spot, just from hearing him speak, I am not surprised that they're so excited. And that's because their last two offensive coordinators were the exact opposite of Getsy. Like, I'm sorry, like they're just personality-wise, they're three different people, right? But the first two are very, very similar in terms of demeanor, right? You ask a question and you get a 3-word answer back. Well, you ask Getsy a question and he's going to give you everything you need to know. And I say that not because he's helping us do our job, obviously, but imagine if we ask that question and we get an answer like that, imagine how much of an education he's giving to the players players when they ask a question, right? They're not getting 1-word answers back, 3-word answers back, or being made to feel dumb because they don't know something, right? So I feel like with Getsy, that's why the guys are excited. They're like, wait,
Yeah.
this guy's bringing the energy. Anything I need, he's answering. He's gladly answering it. He's talking to me like I'm a man. Like you can't help but root for that. So I think the guys love him. I think they love his demeanor, and I think they love what he brings to the table.
So I am hearing that there are a lot of guys kind of excited about getting a chance to play special teams with all the new rules. Are you shocked that there's so much excitement about kickoffs now?
So you got to think, right? That the biggest change here is that you now don't have to sprint X amount of yards down the field full speed into another human being running full speed in front of you, right? That changes the game for a lot of people who just were never good at doing that. So yeah, I can see a lot of people who've already played special teams or never played special teams being excited about the change. That's a large difference in terms of the normal kickoff and what they're trying just from running distance and impact and contact. I could see a lot of guys saying, hey, we can go make a name for ourselves without risking as much injury on the field.
Now, obviously, we don't know when people are watching this podcast because OTAs are later this afternoon. If you're watching in the morning, if you're watching at night, they were earlier today. But we're going to have video up. I'm very excited that we're going to get to hear from Marvin Lewis today. And at the time of this taping, Marvin hasn't spoken yet. That's why we're speaking of it as if it's coming. I've got so much personal respect for him. You may remember I was one of the guys pushing for him to get the Michigan State job, and he was going to take it. And then he was basically asked, hold on a minute, we think you'll get a head coaching job. And he did with the Natty. But great man. He is a free thinker. He is a no BS guy. He's an older version of Antonio. And one of the things that has impressed me, and I've heard about this, I have not been told this by Raider coaches directly, but Raider coaches have told people who then told me directly that everyone is shocked at the way AP listens and the way he wants people to speak. It's very rare in the NFL. Now, to Marvin's credit, Marvin was that kind of a head coach, and so was Tom. They wanted their assistants to speak up. Again, we go back to it. We're not kissing his rear end, but we're just reporting the truth. I think every hurdle AP's been asked to jump, he is cleared by a mile. This guy is doing it the right way.
Yeah, AP again, he's done the best job that you can really have asked in the situation that he's in. In terms of the fact, in terms of how he listens, I think when you consider all the coaches he brought in with all those years of experience that they have, it's kind of one of those things of like, if they're already there, you might as well listen to them, right? You got that experience in the room for a reason. Let them speak up, let them speak freely, and you start getting those ideas bouncing off the walls, and the possibilities are endless. So I think it's a special trait about AP that he has the ability to listen. He's as coachable as he's asking the players to be, right? He's showing them exactly what he's asking. So I think that goes a long way as well. But then I think it just shows how much respect he has for the coaches that are around him and the years of experience that they have. And I think it all makes for a good environment in that room.
All right, last thing from me, Zeke, but I think this one is really big. Talking to a player, and I said to him, what do you think is the biggest difference from a year ago to now? And he said something that blew my mind. He said it's even different from last season at the end. He said all the guys, offense, defense, special teams, speed player, flex player, big, specialty, whatever. They want player input. And it doesn't mean that they're doing what the players want all the time, but they're listening to players. Players feel like I'm invested because I'm able to offer a voice. I'm sorry. I think that comes with the fact that he played in this league. And I think it comes with that he's brought in coaches where he lets them know this is what I want. If AP has done one thing right, and I think he's done everything right, it's almost like those companies that give stock to their employees and make them part owners. He has given ownership of this team, no offense to Mark Davis, to those players. I think it's a brilliant move on his part. I love your thoughts.
I think again, like you said, it speaks to him being a player coach, right? The fact that he used to be a player, he knows what players are looking for. He knows what they need. And then they needed the exact opposite of what they were getting last season in terms of being able to speak up freely. So I think AP understands that. I think he's able to connect with that. And I think the players enjoy that. I will say I've noticed just on a very, small sense, it feels like much more of a team from what I've gathered, right? Sometimes I don't know if I'm on the offensive side or the defensive side of the ball when I'm watching out in practice because it just all feels like a team that's running together, right? And it speaks to how far they've come together as a team and how far they've grown. So I think what we're going to see with these guys going forward is just them opening up, right? Continue to be free. If something comes to mind or if something's not working, they're going to feel like they can go to the coaching staff and say this is not working and make the tweaks. And just them feeling like that can change the whole season alone, just in that fact alone. So I'm excited.
So, Zeke, I'm doing a national interview this week, and I was asked who I thought was going to be the starting quarterback. And I said, well, the Raiders have made it clear it's Aiden O'Connell's job to lose. So I've not seen anything yet from him that makes me think he's going to lose it. He's in great shape. He's throwing the ball well, talking to players. They seem, no one's dislikes Gardner. I'm not implying that at all. But at this point, I think we have to say it's Aiden. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I strongly agree with that. And I'm eager to see what Aiden continues to look like, when we see him in practice. But do I agree with that? I strongly agree with that. Yes, sir. From what I've seen in practice, it's early. It's very, very early. I understand that. But I strongly agree with that. I'll say that.
Awesome. Stay on the line, Zeke. I need to talk to you. That's the great Zeke Trezevant. By the way, tell them how to find you on social media, would you, bud?
Yes, EZTREZ_SI on X/Twitter. So EZTREZ_SI.
Awesome. That's Ezekiel Trezevant. Remember, you can find me when you go on IG to Hondo SR, on X, formerly known as Twitter, when you go to @Hondo Carpenter, and you can find all of our articles. We're doing 10 or more pieces a day of content on the Raiders. Nobody is giving you as much content. Then when you add reels and videos and everything else, we're doing sometimes up to 20 pieces of content a day, 100% free. Nobody else covers your Raiders like we do, and you find it at si.com/NFL/Raiders. We'll see you all back here again tomorrow.